Hi guys, welcome to DTTV. Today we are looking at doing the hub for the wheel that we're going to make from Lego. The first parts are to draw this. Understanding it, we've already looked at the previous video, or you should have done, and that will show you that this comes from a revolve. In essence, what we need to start off doing is drawing the basic shape. I am going to remove a lot of the detail. I'm also going to delete this revolve and say yes. And the sketch that you need to draw effectively sits in this area here, because what we do is we use this to make the shape. Now all the dimensions will be on the technical drawing that's going to follow this, and in essence what we do is we draw this shape, making sure we've got all the right sizes. You'll notice there's a number of centre lines, and it's going to be down to you to recognise where to put them. When you do it, there are aspects where if we've got a centre line, it's probably going to be symmetrical around edges. The other thing to remember is that as you draw this, centre lines will not affect the island that you're drawing. However, if you leave them as solid lines, or solid lines floating around or on top of each other, that will have an effect and will stop SolidWorks from propagating your shape. We're going to use a revolve. So click on the revolve tool. What it asks us to do is to pick our sketch that we want to revolve, and I'm going to choose that one. So we go from being grey when it's inactive to being blue when it is active. It's asking me for my axis of revolution. Click on there, pick the centre line, and then as you can see, that then gives us our 3D shape. With that in mind, we're now going to move forwards and have a look at the technical drawing. So as you can see here, this is our technical drawing. Now it's got all the measurements on it that you require to work out the component elements and aspects. When you look at it, there are some dimensions that are obviously core important. When we look at this, we've got all the distances, so we've got leader lines that point at the lines above them. We've got the centre line here, so everything is measured from that centre line, so the arrow here points at the centre line, so the line, if I zoom in on it, you can see is 1.7 between the arrowhead there, which leads us to this line, and the centre there. Now remember, you're only drawing half the shape, so you're going to draw this half of the shape, or the other, depends on you, but it's only one half, because then we use the revolve tool to change it into our rounded shape. At this stage of the video, you should pause the video and use the dimensions here to create your shape. Now importantly, whilst you're creating this shape here, there are dimensions in this view which are giving you more details. So for instance, you can see that it's talking about the diameters of the circles here. So if you can't find your measurement in this section, then at that stage you should refer to the one above. There are some dimensions in this view, such as the degrees of various component parts, which are not yet important to us. So focus on this shape, draw the half shape, and then restart the video once you've finished that. Okay, so that's obviously taking you a little while to get to this stage. You're likely to have measurements and various other bits and bobs on the screen, which I've removed for clarity, but don't panic about that. You're now going to come into the 3D tools. You're going to use the revolve tool. You may not get this asking you to pick your particular frame, because you've already got it selected, so if it's dark blue or black, it's already there. So I've made mine so that it's come active again. In here, I've chosen the revolve tool. The axis is the centre one. Make sure you pick the right one, because if you pick the wrong one, you'll end up with an entirely different shape. So pick the central axis and then green tick it. Okay, so at this stage, what we've got now is we've got the basic shape, and we need to start considering how we're going to chop the cross section into the bottom. And the cross section is going to look like that in the bottom. So at this stage, we now need to work out how big and how to draw that. So we will now focus on that particular section. So we're going to return to the technical drawing. So I'm going to zoom in on this particular aspect. You'll notice that we've got the cutaway sections are represented by hidden detail, because actually we're looking down on the top of the view at the moment. We know they're in the bottom, so make sure when you do it, you're cutting into the bottom edge rather than the top edge. And from here, we can then work out how to do it again. There's 4 of them. There's a centre line coming across here, and there's also a centre line across here, so they are symmetrical. You'll also notice that the outside dimension with the 4.4, all the corners of each point meets within this inner circle, and each of the pieces is 0.6 either side of the centre line. Where it meets, it's then got a flat edge, so you should now draw that particular part of the drawing and then use the extrude cut tool to cut that into the product. When doing so, you will notice that you need to cut to 3 depth. So I'll leave you with that. So again, if you pause the video and then put those aspects in and then return to the video when you've done it. On the next section now, we're looking at cutting the slot that cuts through the middle of here. Now something you'll notice is that the slot itself is cut at 45 degrees to the rest of the components you've just done. So for instance, when we look at the bottom view, if I now show you the cut by going to hidden detail, you'll notice that the cut is at 45 degrees across. Now one of the problems we have here is the fact that the circular hub is circular. That means that we don't have any straight lines or straight edges which are pointing in the right direction to allow us to cut this particular section from the body. That means we need to create a new plane, so I'm going to show you how to do that now. So using the sketch tools, we start here. We're going to sketch on a flat face that we know is perpendicular, so 90 degrees to the view we want, and I'm going to go normal 2 to that. At that stage, I can create my face in the middle or at some other level here, but it's pretty easiest to do it from the middle. So I'm going to draw a centre line, and I'm going to go from the middle point, and I'm going to make sure that it then drops into being 45 degrees, 135 degrees. It depends on which way you want to do it. So have a look at the model. I mean, because it's symmetrical, that you don't have any major issues there. So 45 degrees. The important aspect here is where this point is. I can use the end points of either here or here to create my plane, and I want one that cuts straight through the middle of my model at 45 degrees. So we'll now do that. So green tick that. I'm now going to exit out of that sketch. Okay, from here I can then create my new plane. So what I'm going to do is going to use the new plane tool, so the one up here. I'm going to choose the point of my line, and I'm going to choose the line itself. Now you'll notice that when I do this, a very large yellow plane comes up. Sometimes they're at a slightly wonky angle to everything. That's not a major concern. If I want the plane to cut across it this way, that's absolutely fine. I could sketch on it. Equally, I could use the perpendicular tool, because I've chosen the end point. That puts it at 45 degrees the other way. As we discussed, this is a symmetrical shape, so at this stage there are no concerns in terms of which way it is, but it's a good way of making sure that you can then change it. Equally, I could have chosen parallel to the line. Again, that gives me more options. So when you're creating planes, you can play with how they sit in reference stuff, but they're always at 90 degrees to the end of your line, so at 90 degrees from the line, the direction the line was drawn in. I'm going to green tick that. Now this produces us with a small problem. First and foremost is that the plane we're drawing on is huge, so it's quite difficult to manage sometimes, so dragging it down in size is quite useful. The second problem here is that we've got a 3D sketch. Now 3D sketches are very complicated to use and very difficult and tricky in terms of what they are. So a normal sketch icon looks like this, and then the 3D sketch looks like this. The issue we have is that 3D sketching involves drawing in a number of planes and understanding a far more technical way of creating your shapes. It can be very useful, but unfortunately it's something that we don't use due to the levels of complexity, and also the fact that we can normally work our way around it without doing it. So at this stage, I've got my 3D sketch here, which is on here. I do not want to draw in this as part of this 3D sketch, so I'm going to exit out the sketch. You press the red one, it will delete the whole plane and everything else. We don't want to do that. We just want to exit out the sketch. So, put that closed. Now what I can do is I can click sketch, and then I can choose a new plane. Now you'll notice that what actually happens here is I have a new sketch has popped up, and we're no longer using the 3D sketch. That allows us then to sketch freely and to create the shapes that we need to do. So here we are looking now back at the technical drawing with the new slots that cut in it. You can see from this that it's 4.4 wide, and it's represented by the dotted lines or the hidden detail that is actually popped in here. Equally, we can then look down in the bottom view, and you can see that the slot is represented here, and it's 2.3 wide. I minimise this and go back to our design. If we look at this, we have the square tool, and the easiest option here is to use the center rectangle and then to dimension it. So you can use the middle of your point, drag your shape out, add in the correct dimensions, and then do an extrude cut through your shape. So again, do those steps and then we'll move on to the next one. So now we're going to get onto cutting this shape from the top of the hub, and then what we'll do is we will then pattern that shape around to allow us to cut in each of the 6 aspects here. Back to our technical drawing. We now have the details in here, and you can see that what we've got a shape that's drawn in the centre, 21 degrees from either side. We've got the dimensions for the overall size on the outer edge. Equally, we then have the size for the inner edge here. So using the dimensions, including the radius, I want you to now draw this shape across here. Having done that, you should then return to the video and we'll carry on. So in order to do our circular pattern, you will be at the stage where you have cut the shape. It's much easier to pattern shapes once you've done a physical 3D aspect to it. Those of you who are paying particular attention may have noticed that I've got a few issues here. It's because I've come back to my model and I've undone things so that it allows us to do the tutorial. You're unlikely to have them, so these are error messages. Even if you do have them, it will still work, so don't panic too much about that. To do this, what we now need to do is we need to work out how to do our circular pattern. So we've made a 3D shape, which means we have to do a 3D pattern. Under the linear pattern tools, there are then a variety of different options. Circular pattern is the one we want. So I'm going to click circular pattern. It's asking me for the center axis. The issue we have here is we don't have any lines or points in the center of our shape. So I'm going to go to view and then temporary axis, and that will then give us the middle line. It's also given us some additional lines in terms of the centers of the circles that we use to create these shapes here. I'm going to pick the middle one. You'll notice that the line in the center by my cursor goes to green straight line. Click on that one. I then have to tell it what feature. Now, you can click on it by clicking the actual feature in the shape, but that's quite tricky sometimes. So the easiest way is to click the little plus in the corner here, and then find our shape, which is the hubcat there. I don't want 18, I want 6. So 6, and then equal spacing, and then I can green tick. That gives me the hubcat on top. From this stage, we've now got the final aspect, which is just simply putting the Lego logo on top. So you've all done that before, so popping in the Lego logo at 0.1 raised from the top. Having done that, you should save your shape, and then you should do your technical drawing. You've been watching DTTV with Sim.